Hello, this is Mark from CQ Simple. Today I'd like to talk about taking two Nimbus platforms and networking them so you can extension dial between your Nimbus platforms, whether they're across the city, across the state, or across the country. I'll first kind of walk through the general procedures. At that point we'll jump into the Nimbus platforms themselves and actually do the programming. My hope is that you can just play this video side by side while trying to do it, and it should lead you through the process and perhaps keep you from falling into any pitfalls when programming the platforms to talk to each other. The general procedure, the general setup, first thing you want to make sure is that you've got different extension numbers on each Nimbus. Maybe 100s on one, 200s on another, 1100s, 1200s. Next you want to configure an IAX trunk on each system. You're going to configure an outbound route on each system, and I'll take you through all that programming. Step number 4 is going to be key, because even if you've got 1 through 3 all set up correctly, it will not be effective until you have that port forwarding. So you know we use 5060 for SIP. That's standard. For the Nimbus platforms to talk to each other, the IAX connections actually uses 4569 for UDP, and you're going to forward that to the local IP of each Nimbus. So you're going to need to know the WAN IP of each Nimbus in order to do this programming, and you also need access to the routers to be able to set up that port forwarding. You can either have your own router there and forward that port yourself, or if you're working at the customer's site, then you can let them know that you need that port opened and forwarded to the Nimbus. You can even open it and forward it, but restrict it only to the WAN IP of the other Nimbus, so you don't necessarily have to open port 4569 to the rest of the world. Alright, let's hop into the procedure here. I've got two Nimbus platforms. One of them is at 97.87.30.84. That's its WAN IP. The other one's at 97.87.253.219. So separate WAN IPs. In this case they do happen to be in the same city, but in this case it doesn't even really matter. So we'll start with the .84 first. So I'm going to go to Nimbus Voice Programming. This is our demo system here, so it's always got some interesting things happening inside of it as people are making changes. So under Connectivity, we're going to set up a trunk. In this case, we are going to add an IAX2 trunk. So this is going to be different from our standard SIP trunk. So add IAX2 trunk. So we're going to call this link to Nimbus 2. So it doesn't, that name is really not going to play a huge role into it other than you being able to recognize what trunk this is. So this is going to be the trunk that you use to talk to the second Nimbus. You don't necessarily need a caller ID. In this case you're going to go right to the IAX2 settings. The trunk name is important here. So it's important in the fact that you need to know what it is, because you are going to be using it later. So we'll say to Nimbus Midland. Then under peer details, first start with a username. This is up to you. You can type in whatever you want here. We'll just say CQ Simple, exclamation point. Type equals friend. Secret equals, this also is up to you, it should be complex, so if you want to do something random, that's great. Definitely don't make it password 123 or password or secret 123. This can compromise the security of your system if you make that secret too simple. Qualify frequency OK equals 25,000. That's just basically how often it's going to check in. So qualify FREQ OK equals 25,000. Qualify equals yes. Host equals, this needs to be the IP of the Nimbus you're talking to. So we're going to come back up here, and we're going to be talking to this Nimbus right here. That's why it's important to have both WAN IPs available. So we want to be talking to 97.87.253.219. Context equals from internal. Then I'm going to click on Incoming tab. This user context needs to be the same as the user name. So I use CQ simple exclamation point. So I'm going to copy and paste it there. Type equals user. Secret equals, this needs to be the same secret as you used back here. So I'm just going to highlight and copy it. And paste it. Host, this needs to be the IP of the second Nimbus as well. So you're basically just setting up inbound and outbound trunking here. Okay, so there's the IP of the second Nimbus. Context equals from internal. And we're going to leave the register string blank. We're going to submit that. It asks you to include a caller ID. You don't have to include a caller ID. Okay, so here's our link to Nimbus 2 IAX connection. Now we need to make an outbound route so that when someone dials a number, it knows to send it to the other platform. So under connectivity, click outbound route. Then click Add Outbound Route. The route name here is, we'll say, this is going to the Midland Nimbus. Once again, that's up to you. That name does not have to match anything specifically. If you want to give us a caller ID, you can. You don't necessarily have to. This is going to be an intra-company route type. Trunk sequence, this is an important one. You want to make sure you click on the trunk that you just made. So it's going to use that IAX2 trunk. So trunk sequence, use just that IAX2 trunk. Then click on dial patterns. And for dial match, let's just say that Midland Nimbus is extensions 200, 201, 202, 203. What you would do is do 2XX. Meaning anytime someone dialed a 200 of some sort, 201, X is basically a wildcard, it's going to use this outbound route, which then uses the trunk you just made. So I'm going to submit that. So we've done everything we need to do on this Nimbus. Now we need to go to the other Nimbus and basically mirror this. So if we go to the other Nimbus, under connectivity, we need to set up a trunk to talk to the first Nimbus. So I'm going to add a trunk. It needs to be an IAX2 trunk. Trunk name, we'll just say to Nimbus 1. Once again, that name doesn't actually play a significant role in anything, it's just for you to recognize it. Then you want to click on the settings. The trunk name here, we'll say to Nimbus 1. For peer details, we're going to need the username. Now in this case, we need to make sure we're using the same username that we used in the first system. So I'm going to come back here, make sure I copy and paste it correctly. So that's why it's helpful to have access to both of them before you set this up. So I'm going to take my IAX trunk I set up, I'm going to edit it, just basically click on this blue pencil. Click on my settings, and I want to take and copy that username. I'll actually show you a nice little secret here. I'm going to copy the whole thing, and I'm going to paste it. So I'm back on, this is my second Nimbus now, and I'm connecting back to the first one. So the username is going to be the same, type equals friend, the secret's going to be the same, qualify is same. The one thing you need to change here is the host. You want to be talking to the first Nimbus. So we want to talk to 197.87.30.84. So that made it a little bit easier. Then on incoming, this needs to be the same username as you used earlier. And let's go back to our first Nimbus and look at what we have here. So I'm actually just going to be able to copy and paste this. And come back to my second Nimbus under incoming, paste it, type equals user, secret the same. Notice here the host is not right though. We want to be talking to the first Nimbus, so I'm just going to copy and paste the address for the first Nimbus right there, and voila. You just made the IX trunk now from the second Nimbus to go back and talk to the first Nimbus. It helped to be able to copy and paste that. I'm actually going to come back here. I'm going to apply the configs on the first one. Now I need to open an outbound route. So I'm still on my second system right now. So I'm going to add an outbound route. Well, the route name here will say is to Nimbus 1, or to Nimbus Chicago, or whatever the name of that first Nimbus is. That name, once again, is up to you. You don't have to copy or paste anything specifically in there. It's an intra-company route. The trunk sequence, you want to use the IX trunk you just made, so you want to use the to Nimbus 1 SIP trunk, or I'm sorry, IX trunk. The dial pattern here, this is going to depend on what the extensions are on the first Nimbus. So if they're 100s, you would do 1XX. That would send any 100 extensions to call the first Nimbus. If the first Nimbus used extensions 300, you would use 3XX. Hopefully they're not 200, because then they'd both be using 200 and that would be confusing. It could be done, but preferably not to. So we'll just say they're 100s. I'm going to submit that. Apply configs here. So now you've set up your trunk on each system. You've set up your outbound route on each system. And as long as you have your ports open, you should be all set. You should be able to dial between the platforms. One way to check to see if your port is open, let me show you how to do this. Under Reports, click on *info. Then click on Peers. Okay, so I clicked on Reports, *info. Takes me to this summary page. Then I want to click on Peers. So this shows you all of your extensions, it shows you your SIP trunks, and right here, IAX peers, to Midland, Nimbus Midland, that's the IP of the other system, status OK. And you can see we're using port 4569. So if you tried to set this up, but you didn't have that port forwarded, right here it would say unreachable. So that would be your key that you need to get into the router and port forward 4569 to the local IP of the Nimbus. I hope that was helpful. This information can be found at the back of our Nimbus Voice Manual, which is available to our dealers on the webpage. It also can be found on webinars on our website, but I thought it would be good to put it on a simple video for this purpose alone. If you have any questions, obviously give us a call, shoot us an email. Hope you have a great day.